If you feel like that buying a single family home is out of reach and you're thinking of purchasing a condo or townhome, you need to pause. Hi, my name is Danny Brown. I'm the CEO of Myriad Real Estate Group, and today we're going to talk about why the condo market is going to go from bad to worse. Before we get into this, I just want to express that I am not a doomer, that I do not think that the housing market's going to collapse, that I believe in home ownership as a long-term investment and way to grow wealth. So I just want to make that clear on the front end. The condo market, however, is facing challenges currently, and nothing has really changed in the housing market, but the biggest challenge that condos are facing today is that it is cheaper to rent luxury apartments than it is to buy a condo. Condo inventory is spiking. The home values are coming down so they can look super attractive, and your traditional agents are pushing them as great starter homes. When you have a lot of supply, prices come down, so rent is substantially cheaper than it is to own, even townhomes and condos. And so we're seeing a lot of the would-be first-time home buyers continuing to rent in these luxury apartments versus going out and buying. And so that is causing home values for townhomes and condos to go down every single month because there is just more supply than there is demand. And so this isn't out of the blue. What I have seen over the last few years is it is extremely difficult to move townhomes and condos. Townhomes and condos, just for context, appreciate slower than single family homes. And when the market shifts, they're the first to lose value. We saw this leading up to the 2008 collapse, and we're seeing it again in this challenging housing market that we're facing. So to understand where we are going to in the future with townhomes and condos, we need to rewind and go back in time to 2021. If a lot of you remember, there was a painful disaster that took place in Florida where, due to a community and an HOA not maintaining a property the way that they should, it collapsed. Led to a lot of people losing their lives, and it's something that absolutely could have been avoided. So Fannie and Freddie Mac back 70% of all home loans in the United States, and of course when a tragedy like this happens, they are going to dictate mandates to inflict changes across the board. But there's always going to be unforeseen consequences on the back end, and that's what we're going to see when it comes to townhomes and condos. And this isn't specific to Arizona or our local MLS. This is going to affect everyone across the country. So currently most HOAs have financials, right? So they have to operate. They cover your insurance. They cover landscaping. If there's a pool, they have to cover the cost of maintenance if it's gated. So all of these amenities that these communities have cost money. And so HOAs collect HOA dues on a monthly basis, and for some of these communities they are horribly mismanaged and they don't have enough in reserves or in savings to protect themselves if something were to happen. So if a unit burns down, for example, they don't have enough money to pay the insurance deductible to have it rebuilt. So these communities need to operate with a certain amount in reserves in order to be viable for lending. And after the Surfside condo collapse, the federal government stepped in and set a mandate for a minimum amount of reserves that these HOAs need to have for townhomes and condos, and that dollar amount was 10%. And so what is happening as of August of this year, 2026, is when a buyer was coming in and they were putting 10% down on their home purchase, they're getting conventional financing. The lender did not have to do a deep dive into the financials of the HOA. Well, in August, that's changing, and now they are going to be mandated to do a deep dive into the financials of that HOA to make sure that they have that 10% in reserves, which a lot of communities do not have, and they've been able to kind of avoid those rules due to the fact that it wasn't a requirement of the lenders to analyze the financials of the HOA. And this is going to affect every condo project that has more than 10 units. So how does this play out in the real world? Well, if you're a buyer buying into one of these communities, and let's say that your mortgage payment is around $1,800 a month, that can feel really affordable. And then all of a sudden, these HOAs now are scrambling to try to make up for these reserves. They'll institute that special assessment for $15,000, divide that out over time. Maybe you're looking at an extra $200 per month now added to your mortgage payment. And now all of a sudden that affordable payment is not so affordable anymore. And the next thing that is going to happen is in 2027, in January, that 10% is going to go to 15%. And so what you're ultimately going to see is either HOAs and condo communities become non-financeable, which means the only people that can purchase in those communities will be cash, or in order for the community to get in compliance with these requirements, they're going to be increasing HOA dues, or issuing what's called a special assessment, where they say, we are short this amount of money, we have 100 units in the community, we want to have this amount of money in a year, so now we are going to charge all of you people that live here in those 100 units this dollar amount for the next year in order to raise those monies. So any way that you look at it, the cost of ownership for these condos is going to be increasing. And if these communities do not get into compliance, they're going to end up on Fannie and Freddie's blacklist, which I know sounds crazy, but they actually have a blacklist, and lenders are going to be able to look that up and find out whether or not the community has these reserves, or if they are going to be non-warrantable, non-financeable. What this means for buyers, what this means for sellers is it comes down to supply-demand semantics. And so if you have a community and you have buyers where most people get loans through Fannie and Freddie Mac, now they can no longer do that. The supply of buyers that exists in the market for these properties drastically shrinks, and that's going to cause home values to go down because of supply and demand. The demand for that housing goes down because there's less buyers for it, and prices will be negatively impacted, and the values of all of these homes will continue to go down. So that community instantly becomes cash only, which cuts out 95% of the buyer pool. So my personal opinion of all of this is condos and townhomes, they kind of suck, especially right now. It's impossible to sell these things right now, and some of these laws haven't even gone into effect. So if you're somebody that's thinking, well, I'm going to sell this now to get away from it, people are already aware, and the demand for these homes is already low. Anecdotally, I've had many conversations with townhome and condo owners who have purchased within the last 3 to 5 years, and a lot of them are upside down because these values have been coming down. And I don't think that we have found the bottom yet. I think that as these things go into effect, it's just going to continue to negatively impact these values overall. So if you are a current owner of one of these, if you are currently trying to sell one of these, it's definitely going to get worse before it gets better. And again, I'm not all doom and gloom. Markets are always seeking balance. And even if you bought a home at the peak of 2006, 2007, before the market crashed, if you held the property long enough, you've more than doubled your money, regardless of what property it was. So home values always have a tendency to come back, right? The pendulum is always swinging in the other direction. So eventually, yes, we will find the bottom. And eventually, yes, those home values will start to increase again. And maybe we work through some of these unforeseen consequences and legislation comes out that corrects some of this, right? We have a lack of property nationwide for our growing population and people who want to own homes, and townhomes and condos make up a large part of that. So again, this is something that I think is going to negatively impact us in the short term. And so if your time horizon is the next, you plan on owning something for the next 3 to 5 years, if I'm a buyer, I am probably not looking at townhomes and condos, and I am either saving money while I'm renting and trying to buy a single family home, or I'm transitioning away from trying to buy a townhome or condo now and buying a single family home instead. Maybe going a little bit further out, buying something a little bit smaller, and just avoiding those for the time being. But if you're somebody that's a winter visitor, which is huge in Phoenix, you want that lock and leave lifestyle and you plan on owning it for 7, 10 plus years, then sure, this is an amazing buyer opportunity because a lot of these things are going to be cheap. And so you can get properties for maybe below market value for the next couple of years. If the only thing that you're looking at is purchasing a condo, then you really need to try to get the reserves up front, the financials of the HOA up front, the meeting minutes of the HOA up front. That can all be extremely difficult because, as we all know, HOAs love to charge for everything. And so they charge fees to get these documents. Now, when you go under contract, part of the contract is you will get a copy of all these and the title company will order those for you. But that can take 10, 14 days, 3 weeks to get. I've had several instances just this year where we finally get that documentation and we're days away from closing just to find out that the financials are not in order and the community can't be financed. And so in order to avoid that from happening, or trying to avoid that from happening, get with your lender, give them the HOA name and the address to see if that community is already on the blacklist. And then if it is, you'll know already that you can't get financing on it. Otherwise, try to get those things early, but if you can't, just know that you will get a copy of that from the title company once you go under contract on the property. In the end, I would consider pivoting away from townhomes and condos here in the short term and focusing more on single-family homes as an investment or continuing to rent. There's a lot of agents out there right now that are going to continue to push you into purchasing these properties and may not be aware of the changes that are coming up. And I would say don't let them do that. Ask a lot of questions. And I just, for the foreseeable future in general, my personal opinion is don't buy a townhome or condo unless your time horizon is 7 to 10 plus years, because then all of this may not matter. But in the short term, it absolutely does. There's nothing wrong with continuing to rent until you're in a position to buy. And there's also nothing wrong with buying a little bit further out where your money goes farther versus settling and having to buy a townhome or condo. So I'm genuinely not being an alarmist here. I definitely believe in home ownership. If you are actively in the market looking for homes and you want a second set of eyes on the HOA financials, definitely let us know. We're happy to help. We want to be here to protect you, protect your equity, and help you grow your wealth. Interested to see what you're seeing in the marketplace as well, so definitely leave a comment below. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.